welcome to SoCal Surf with Dan Nappy. Today we're going to be surfing at the Huntington Beach Pier, both sides. But to get started, let's thank our sponsors up front, Merch Hero, NappyClothing.com, Task Bullet, and Swing Easy Hammocks for their tremendous support to our podcast. Well, today, checked out the cameras early, but the tide is high and the surf is small, which makes it where it doesn't really break. It kind of just rolls down and then slams onto the shore in what we call shore break. And so you really can't ride the shore break when it's like it is today, where it just pops up and slams right onto the sand. But as we looked towards the south side, and about lifeguard stand 3, there was a little peak and about 15 guys out. And a little bit north to that, there was a little wave that nobody was catching. So we decided we'd give that a try. So we headed out next to the pier on the south side and then paddled south. The current was going south anyway, so it wasn't hard to get over there. And then we tried to catch them, but they were pretty tricky. They would build up, and then they would look like they were going to break, and then they would flatten out, and then they'd reform and break again. So you'd be chasing it, and then it would disappear. And if you got too far in, then you'd be catching the shore break. So you have to be somewhere in between the shore break and outside to catch them. And occasionally, one would come in further out, way out. And so you'd paddle like crazy to get out there. And sometimes you can get out in time and sometimes you couldn't. So I was having a really hard time trying to get in position to catch some waves. You just had to be lucky in most cases to find the wave that you want. And then, of course, there were a few people there, so it made it difficult to be alone on a wave. So you had to kind of just work your way around. But overall, the main thing is you got to keep going, keep up your paddling strength, as we call it, keep in condition, because with the way it's been lately, with being so sporadic, you get 2 or 3 days off, and you get a little lax and a little flabby, let's call it. And then you get back out there and you get tired real quick. And sometimes we've gone, a week without surfing, and that's our exercise. So, if you this is your usual exercise routine and you don't get to do it, well, that's a little bit of a problem, So it was, you have to go out, you have to surf, so you do what you can, try to catch what you can. But we sat there for a while, a lot of in-betweens, and we looked over on the north side, and I could see plenty of white water. So I decided that I was going to paddle over there against the current instead of getting out and walking down, which is what I should have done. So I started paddling towards the pier, just paddling easy, taking my time, nice strokes, glide a little, stride a little. But I finally got through the pier, and then on the other side, I paddled a little bit further north and just waited to see what waves would come. And so I chased a few. I wasn't catching anything. And so kind of a same kind of situation as the south side. Just it would build up, look like it was going to break, and then it would just disappear. And so you had to be lucky again. So after a while, we got a little lucky, let's say, and some waves came to us. It was just me and Craig, so it was just 2 of us in our little group today. And so we got a nice right. The waves were coming really strong out of the north. So as you look down the beach, they're at a pretty good angle, like a 15% angle to the sand, and which is very pronounced when you're looking at it from a distance. As it gets closer to you, you can't tell that much, but it was at a 15 or more angle to the sand. So they were all rights. Every left you looked at closed out pretty quick. So you had to go right, and then you had to be careful not to build up into the shore break, because that shore break didn't break in the water, it would break on the sand. And so you had no place to jump off or get out of the wave if you tried to take it all the way in. So you had to get out of the wave soon enough that you didn't crash into the sand, because that would hurt, and that would definitely have a good chance of breaking your board in half. So you want to just get out of that wave as quick as you can. And that shore break was getting pretty gnarly. It was the sand, as the tide was coming up, it was reaching the higher sand, which is at a stronger angle than than low tide. So the wave would break and you'd rush up that steep sandy embankment and then push back out, and you'd actually have a wave going out to sea, sometimes as big as some of the waves that were coming in. So, and then as the wave would come out and the wave coming in would meet, they would jack up and throw you up into the air. So you had to be careful when you took off. If you in a lot, it happened a lot to a lot of people. They take off, and the wave that's coming back out from the shore break, I don't know what you'd call that, but the wave is coming back out to the ocean. It would hit the wave coming in that you're riding, and then it would just jack up. And if you weren't looking for it, you can get thrown right off your board and get thrown into the air and then land wherever. So you had to watch that shore break coming back at you. And then if that wasn't enough, when we were done, we were trying to get out of the water, and you have to time it so the shore break doesn't hit you and drive you into the sand. So I started to look, and all I can see were the shore break just getting thrown up. So I paddled back out a little ways, and I paddled towards the pier where the shore break wasn't as gnarly, it wasn't as steep. So as I was going towards the pier, I could see another wave coming, so I paddled for it, caught it for a second, then pulled out. And then it kind of went flat, so I thought, this is my chance. So I paddled in, and luckily I made it between the breaks. So I was able to paddle in, stand up, and then start walking up. And just as I was about halfway out of the water, about ankle deep water, another big wave came from behind me. And I just stood there, kind of got a wide stance and held my board up high as the wave came from behind me and rushed up onto the sand. And it went over the berm into the flat sand above the dry sand, let's say. And then it started all to come back at me, and it was like standing in a river. And it was just raging through my legs, and I was just hanging on until the water went back into the ocean. And I quickly ran up the side of the sand berm there, and it's called a mini mountain, let's call it. And once I got above that, I was above the shore break. So it was pretty strong shore break for this. This is kind of the winter time when it kind of gets this way. But the only weird thing is the tides have just been all high tides for months now in the morning. And then the afternoon, the low tide comes in, and hit and miss. Sometimes you get a good low tide with no wind, which would happen on Sunday. Of course, we don't surf on Sunday, but I walked down there to look at it, and it was low tide, and there was no wind, and it was just warm, offshore, just a real light offshore breeze, and it was gorgeous, So we just watched for a little bit, and then I was just hoping that it would hold till tomorrow, which is now today. And it looked okay. It was just real difficult conditions, real tricky to catch those waves and avoid the wave coming back at you. It wasn't choppy, it wasn't windy, so the wave, there wasn't a lot of ugly ocean, just really tricky waves to catch. So there you go. So we finally went in, and I rode my bike today instead of got a ride. Just met Craig there because he was already there looking at it before we decided to go. And there you have it. So we'll check and see what tomorrow shall bring. It's supposed to get bigger, so maybe we'll try a different beach tomorrow. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Thanks. I will see you tomorrow, and thanks for listening. Bye.